I can remember the excitement of getting my first image of a kingfisher when I began bird photography. As my journey continued, I soon discovered that the background of an image was just as important as the actual image itself. So what was that discovery, and how do you go about getting a good clean background that makes your image pop? As we all know, in bird photography, it's both challenging and very rewarding once you get it right. One of the most difficult challenges is dealing with the background in your images. In this video, what we'll do is we'll look at how to set yourself up in a position that will help you create striking backgrounds and make your bird images pop out. We'll look at the following: what makes a good background. I'll talk about what I call the 3D steps to success. I'll also look at some post-processing procedures, and I'll give you some top tips along the way. Okay, what I want to do now is look at backgrounds in general themselves. The ultimate aim in choosing a background is to keep it as clean as possible. The cleaner and the simpler the background will ensure that your subject is the centre of attention and that it stands out in the frame. Having said that, we can also look at using natural backgrounds that are in front of us, and that can make for some very interesting backgrounds as well. It's especially true for birds that are sat on perches or branches or other natural surroundings that can make interesting backgrounds. Often, all it takes is, when we're looking at the background, is to move to the right or to the left a couple of steps, or move up or move down, and just try and move into a position. The video that you're seeing now is of waxwings. Each year here in the UK, people always look forward in the winter to waxwings coming into the country. And last year, there was absolutely thousands and thousands of them, and lots of people out there photographing them. However, the waxwing, and the way that you can see from this video, very messy background. So all I had to do was really try and find a spot where I could move to the side, either to the left or to the right, to make sure I could get a good clean background to get these images. One of the effects that we want to achieve in our background is known as bokeh, where a subject pops out from its surroundings. Bokeh is defined as the effect of a soft, out of focus background that you get when shooting an image using a wide aperture. The factors that affect the bokeh are the aperture, the distance from the subject to the background, and the distance of the camera to the subject, and also the focal length of the lens, all of which we're going to look at. Top tip: feeder stations. One of the best tips to control the background, to set up your own bird feeder station. And by following the 3D approach, which I'm going to go through, it should ensure that you do have a good clean background. I've set up a number of feeder stations, and I did a video on that, how to set one up, and I'll leave a link for that in the description below. By setting up the feeder station, what it will do, it will allow you to have more control over the background, and you'll be able to position your hide to your advantage, to take advantage of the good clean background which you're after. Okay, what I want to do now is take you through what I call the 3D approach to ensuring that you get good clean backgrounds. The first D stands for depth of field. You need to have a good understanding of depth of field. Now, a shallow depth of field is when only a small part of your image is in focus. And by using a small, shallow depth of field, you can make the bird pop out by blurring the background out and the foreground. And that can be achieved by using a wide aperture and by getting close to the bird. In this diagram, you'll see that the wider the aperture, the shallower your depth of field is. The smaller the aperture, the wider or the deeper your depth of field is. And it's important to understand the difference between the two. In this picture here of a great crested grebe, we can see that both the foreground and the background are blurred out. And sitting in between the foreground and the background is what's known as the depth of field. And that's where the image is in focus. And that's known as the plane of focus. You only get one plane of focus in any image, and that's where your focus point sits on your subject, which is known as the plane of focus. The second D in the 3D approach stands for distance. What I want you to do is have a look at this diagram that I've put together, which hopefully explains what I mean by distance. Firstly, the closer you are to your subject, the shallower the depth of the field will be, and vice versa. The further you are from your subject, the wider the depth of field will be, as we saw in the previous diagram about apertures. Secondly, the distance between you and your subject helps determine the depth of field. Thirdly, the distance from your subject to the nearest piece of background should be a minimum of 2 times the distance from you to the subject. That's the minimum. Fourthly, the further the distance from the subject to the background, the better. And the final part of the distance is number 5. What you need to try and do is you need to try and get your camera lens and your sensor perpendicular to your subject. By doing that, your subject will be sitting at the optimum position within your depth of field, and more of the subject will be in focus. Shooting at an angle, or shooting from above, coming down, or from below, coming up, will narrow the angle, and it will also shorten the depth of field and the amount that your subject will actually be in focus. So the more you can get your camera and your lens perpendicular to the subject, the more of your subject should sit in that depth of field, and it should be in focus. Top tip, lenses. When it comes to lenses, if you can shoot with as long a lens or as long a focal length as you can, because long lenses actually compress the scene, and that helps to blur out the background and the foreground. A 500mm lens will produce a smoother background than a 100mm lens, taking all the factors that I'm going to go through into account. What I want to do now is just take a little time out to give you a look forward to another project I'm working on at the moment, and that's how to photograph the long-tailed tit. One of the UK's smallest birds, and certainly one of the most beautiful. So coming soon on Kevin Hatley Photography, bird photography and how to photograph the long-tailed tit. And now back to the video. Top tip, foreground. People tend to focus on the background rather than the foreground. However, the foreground can be just as important. There's 2 pictures I want you to have a look at. Firstly, this picture of a gannet, which I took at Bempton Cliffs on the east coast of Yorkshire in England, of a gannet. I'm lying down on the ground looking through the flowers that were in bloom at this gannet that was sat on the cliff top. So think about your foreground. And the second one is a red grouse up in the moorland in the Peak District in Derbyshire in England. And again, you'll see that the importance of the foreground. This time of the year, the heather was in full bloom. It's in August. Best time of the year to photograph red grouse, in my opinion, when the heather's in full bloom. And I've managed to get the foreground in to show off the bird, but at the same time I've blurred out the background. So the foreground, you need to think about the foreground as well as the background. Okay, the third D in the 3D approach to backgrounds is to do with distractions. Before you actually finally settle yourself down into a position to start taking pictures, try and identify anything that could be distracting. Branches, twigs, leaves, grass, etc. Although it's relatively quite easy to remove distractions in post-processing, it's easy to start without them. But I would also remind you that don't go about damaging the environment just for the sake of a photograph. Although a clean background is generally desirable, there can be occasions where introducing the subject's environment will help to tell the story. So the third and final D is distractions. Top tip, shooting raw. Modern day mirrorless cameras offer far superior dynamic ranges over previous DSLR type cameras, etc. And you should use them to the best capabilities, and therefore shooting raw. Post-processing is a part of modern day digital photography. If you're not into post-processing, my advice would be, if you want to take your images to the next level, is to shoot in raw and to start post-processing or having a look at it. If I can do it, I can assure you anybody can do it. So what RAW means is that your images will contain far more information than normal JPEGs. And also it gives you the ability to use post-processing techniques to achieve the best background possible. And what RAW files do is they'll give you higher quality images, they'll give you more colours, that's about the dynamic range, gives you full control over how you want your final image to look, and also it's non-destructive editing. It means if you make a mistake, you can just go back to the beginning and start again. Post-processing. To take your images in RAW means that you're going to have to go through a post-processing process. I personally use DxO Photolab, and I also use Lightroom Classic to process all my images. I did a previous video, if you're a beginner, which was called Editing 5 Steps to Success for Beginners, where I explain my workflow of an image of a waxwing. And here's a picture of it before, and here's a picture of it after. And that's why shooting in RAW with that dynamic range, it does take your images to the next level. One of the last things that I do in my workflow for post-processing is to actually look at the background. And in Lightroom, you can find a mask which is purely to do the background. It will select the background for you, and then you can brighten it, you can darken it, you can do what you want with it to try and get those backgrounds that you're after. Okay, just to summarise, the background of your images, certainly from my viewpoint, is the background is as important as the subject you're actually photographing yourself. By using a wide aperture and distancing yourself correctly with the camera sensor perpendicular to your subject and the background, that will go to helping you to achieve good, clean backgrounds for your bird photography. What I want to do now is just leave you with some images where, certainly for myself, the backgrounds are different, but it's the type of backgrounds that I like to achieve in my images. It might not be for everybody's taste, but by following the steps to the 3D step to success in photographing backgrounds for birds, I'm sure that it will help you to get the images that you're after. Okay, thanks for watching this edition of Kevin Hatley Photography, backgrounds for bird images. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have making it. I say it all the time, I really do enjoy making these videos and being able to share it with other people. All I would ask is that if you've liked it, could you hit the like button? Could I also ask you to subscribe to my channel, Kevin Hatley Photography. It's completely free, it doesn't cost anything. And what it does is, by liking and subscribing to the channel, it just helps me to promote the channel and get it out onto YouTube and share it with people all over the world, which is what I like to do. I just love going out, photographing wildlife here in the UK and sharing that knowledge and that experience with other people. So, until the next time, stay safe, take care, and I hope to see you soon. Bye for now.